Most people never achieve a beautiful home because they overthink every decision and never take action. And I know this because I spent years overthinking interior design because it seemed so unapproachable from the outside. So in this video, I'm going to show you a 4-step system you can use today to create a home you love without expensive renovations, and in many cases, without spending a dime. So let's start with how we actually look at a space, because most people have a natural instinct to put their favorite lamp or stack of books right in the dead center of the surface that they're sitting on. And while that feels balanced in theory, in practice, it's a bit of a dead end for your eye because there's nothing creating tension, and a little tension is what makes things feel alive. So instead, I want you to use the rule of thirds. So imagine a 3x3 grid, like a tic-tac-toe board, which is sitting over your coffee table or your sideboard. And instead of centering your lamp or your plant or whatever you have on there, try placing it on one of those vertical lines, or even better, at a point where those two lines intersect. Because by shifting that slightly to the left or right, you create what's called asymmetrical balance. And that's the kind of balance your brain finds most satisfying. It forces your eye to travel across the rest of the surface to find the counterweight, which makes the whole display feel more high-end. And that's often the difference between a setup that looks like it was thrown together haphazardly and one that looks like it was actively designed. So let's say you have a console table in your entryway. Most people would plop a vase right in the middle and maybe stack some books on either side of it and then call it done. But that's forgettable. Instead, if you take that same vase and slide it to the left third of the table and then place a small stack of books on the right third, now you've created two visual anchors at different heights. And the empty space between them helps keep them in tension with each other. And it just gives the eye room to breathe and move. But I don't want you to overthink this grid. You don't need to tape lines on your furniture. It's really just a mental shift to stop defaulting to the center and start placing things slightly off to one side. That one habit alone will change how every surface in your home looks. So shelves, nightstands, mantles, they all benefit from this. Because centered arrangements are what you see in a catalog that's trying to showcase a single product, but off-center arrangements are what you see in actual high-end homes. But now that you know how to arrange what's sitting on your surfaces, there's a little trick that influences what people see before they even enter the room, and it's one of the fastest ways to make any home feel twice as expensive. And the idea behind this actually comes from photography, where they talk about the frame within a frame, where you shoot through a window or an archway to give your subject more context and pull the viewer deeper into the image. And your home works the exact same way, with your doorways, arches, and even large pieces of furniture acting as those frames. So stand in your hallway and look through the doorway into the next room. What do you see? If it's a blank wall or the back of your TV, then you're wasting one of the most powerful tricks in design. Instead, you want to use that doorway as a frame to spotlight something worth looking at. Something like a statement chair, a piece of art, or just your beautifully made bed. Don't forget to make your bed. But the reason this works so well is because it creates depth. When you walk through your home and catch a glimpse of something beautiful like that framed by a doorway, your brain processes it in the same way it processes a well-composed photograph. There's a subject, there's a border, and there's surrounding context. And so it starts to feel like you're living inside of a movie. And I know that might sound ridiculous, but you'd be surprised at how much of a difference this can make. It's the reason we use arbors during wedding ceremonies, because they give that special moment an extra oomph. They force your eye to look where you want them to, and you can do the exact same thing in your home. And the great thing is, you don't have to renovate anything to make it happen. You just have to pay attention to what's visible from the transitions between your rooms. But even if you don't have that perfect doorway in your place, don't let your architecture limit you. A pair of tall bookcases on either side of a window frames the view outside. A large mirror flanked by 2 wall sconces frames whatever it's reflecting. And even an open shelving unit can act as a frame if you position it so that you see through it into the next room. And if you think of it that way, you're essentially manufacturing moments, creating these little vignettes that make a person walking through your home feel like they're moving through an art gallery of perfectly curated snapshots. And the simplest way to start is to walk through your home the way that a guest would, from the front door to the hallway to the living room to the kitchen. And at every transition point, as you're about to walk through a doorway, stop and ask yourself, is this view worth framing? And if it's not, Either move something worth looking at into that sightline, or rearrange the furniture a bit so the doorway reveals something more interesting. You won't be able to get this every time, but you'd be surprised at how much of a home's feel is actually determined by these in-between moments that most people completely ignore. Now, before we get to the next step, I want to mention that I'm currently offering customized room audits completely free. You just upload one or multiple photos of a room in your home, and I'll send you back a detailed report that highlights your room's strengths and weaknesses across 5 distinct areas, plus specific recommendations on how you can improve in each of those areas. You'll also get budget-specific advice, so whether you want to make changes today that cost you nothing, or you're ready to invest more into your space, you'll get a plan for both. This is something I've been working on for quite a while now, and I won't be offering it forever, so if you want to get your place audited, the link is in the description, or you can go to 5by9.co/audit. Now, step 3 is establishing visual rhythm in your home, and here's how it works. When you introduce a material, a shape, or a color in one part of your room, your brain automatically goes looking for it somewhere else. That's just how we process spaces, right? We're hunting for patterns. And when the brain can't find a match, that object starts to feel like a mistake, almost like it wandered in from another room. So the fix is to create a triangle. So say you have a matte black floor lamp in one corner of your room. Right now it's a lonely object and it doesn't connect to anything else. But if you place a black metal frame on the opposite wall and a black tray on the coffee table, now you've seeded the idea of black metal across 3 different points at 3 different heights. And so you've created a subtle triangle that leads the eye around the room. And that triangle is what tells someone's brain, without them even realizing it, that every piece in here was a deliberate choice. It's one of the secrets designers use to make a thrifted chair look like it was custom ordered for the space. You just find a way to repeat its language, which could be its color, its texture, or its shape, somewhere else in the room, and suddenly it belongs. Now, this doesn't mean every material needs to appear exactly 3 times. The triangle is just a starting point. What you're really building is a rhythm, a pattern of visual similarities that connects different parts of the room. So you can kind of think of it like a song. If a melody plays once, then it's just a sound. But if it comes back in the chorus, now it's a recognizable hook. It's music. And the same thing goes here. A woven basket on its own is just a basket. But a woven basket near a jute rug, near a rattan light fixture, now you've got rhythm. But the mistake people make here is thinking every object needs a match. But that's not rhythm, that's monotone. You don't want everything to be the same wood tone or the same shade of blue. In other words, you want echoes, not copies. For example, a navy throw pillow might echo a dark sapphire vase, which echoes the colors in that moody print on the wall. So they're not identical, but they're clearly part of the same family. So before you add anything new to a room, you want to ask yourself, what else in here speaks the same language? And if the answer is nothing, you might want to think twice first. But here's the catch. You can get the rhythm perfect and your room can still feel lifeless. And that's because so many people make a fatal mistake that makes their space feel like an empty bus terminal and not in an awe-inspiring European sort of way. So to avoid that, we're going to borrow a second idea from photography, which is establishing a clear foreground, middle ground, and background. So the background of your space, as you would expect, is the furthest point. So it's generally made up of curtains, walls, and any artwork sitting on those walls. So if you've got a dark accent wall or a set of long linen curtains, those are the background layers that the rest of your room sits upon. Then your middle ground is what sits directly in front of the background, so it's usually your large pieces of furniture like your sofa or bed. But in a lot of rooms, people make the mistake of pushing their middle ground furniture flat against the wall. But here's the problem. If your sofa is shoved against your back wall, there's no separation between the middle ground and the background. Instead, they just collapse into a single layer, and you lose all sense of depth that you could have achieved in your room. But don't worry, I'll show you how to fix this in a second. And then your foreground includes the smaller items that sit in front of your middle ground furniture. So this is generally things like your coffee table, a bench sitting at the end of your bed, or some plants. And these are the objects that sit closest to you as you enter the room, and they're super valuable in making your space feel layered. Because if I'm honest, the key to achieving depth in your room is really just putting things in front of each other instead of always beside each other. It really is that simple. So if you've got a chair sitting next to a floor lamp, pull the chair forward a bit so the lamp sits slightly behind it instead of directly beside it. Now you're not seeing two separate objects in a horizontal line anymore. You're seeing one object in front of the other, and your eye has to move through those layers: chair, lamp, wall. And the same goes for plants. Instead of parking one just in front of an empty stretch of wall, move it so it slightly overlaps something else, like the edge of a sofa or a console. Not in a way that's going to be annoying, but just enough so it creates a foreground layer with the rest of the room sitting behind it. And even if you've got the world's most boring room of just a couch and a wall, you can still achieve depth by pulling the couch 6 inches off the wall. This introduces a shadow line behind the couch, which tells your eye that there are two distinct items here: a background and a middle ground. And if you bring a third layer in front of that couch, like maybe a coffee table with a nice ceramic vase on top, then all of a sudden you've turned your boring old room into one that's got layers and a bit of pizzazz. Of course, this room here still has a long way to go, but I think you can already see how this one shift of seeing your room in distinct layers can be a huge unlock for giving your room some spice, and it's also completely free, so give it a try and let me know how it works for you. And by the way, this is one of the things your room audit will pick up on. So if you've got a flat, boring room, your audit is going to tell you, and it'll also walk you through how to fix it so your home doesn't feel like a doctor's office. So if you want to get that free room audit, the link is in the description. Or if you want to shortcut the entire process and get your home in designer shape within a matter of weeks, you need to watch this video up here where I'll show you how to achieve your dream home without getting overwhelmed or wasting a bunch of money making the wrong decisions. I'll see you there. Spice!